Hello, this is Colonel Panic 67. I'm bringing to you a how-to video on how to install CentOS, in this case CentOS 5.8, using the kickstart NFS. Okay, I also want to let you know that I'm using VMware ESXi 5.1 as my virtual server, where I'm going to have several virtual hosts running on it. And I actually have a instance called Jasper. I've used this instance here to actually download the ISOs from www.centos.org. Once I had the ISOs installed, I used the loopback to actually create a mount, where I proceeded to copy the contents of the ISO I downloaded onto my NFS mount. CentOS 5.8, there's actually the two DVDs. So pretty much created or took one of the ISOs, mounted it, copied the content onto my NFS mount, then created the second loopback for the second disk, and then copied that content over top of the first content that I copied from the first DVD. And then once I finished there, I also had taken whenever you do a installation of Red Hat or CentOS, the installation creates a file called anaconda-ks, which is created in the /root directory. I can take that directory, or take that file, and use that for my jumpstart. You can also use a utility, which I don't have installed, that you can actually use to create or generate an actual kickstart file, instead of using the one that we already created from an installation. Okay, so what I've done, I've taken that file, and I've copied that to the MNT kickstart directory, which is an NFS mount. And what I've also done, which I've mentioned, was I copied the content from the DVDs. That is actually here, in this mount point on my NFS server. Now, I'm going to go into my Anaconda file, and I'm going to create a copy of it. I'm going to copy this to a file called Anaconda, or copy Anaconda-ks.cfg to CentOS 5.8.cfg. Okay, review this file, and if you notice here at the top, you have install and install a CD-ROM, and that was because I did a CD-ROM install to another VM. So what I do is change this to be NFS, and I'm going to give it the server name or the server IP. As well as a directory where the installation is located. And just verify it. It's going to be NFS CentOS 5.8. And what I'm also going to do is, here we have the definition of the partitions that are going to be created. Again, this is generated from an installation. It's commented out here. So I'm actually going to uncomment this out. I'm going to create one disk instead of having two. So I'm going to make some adjustments. Okay. I know my memory I have is, I'm going to be using 2 gigs of memory. So when I create my swap, being that there's very limited memory I'm going to be using, I'm going to double my size of swap. So I'm going to be using 2 gigs of memory, so I'm going to create a 4 gig swap file. which is 4096. I don't need grow because I know that I'm going to have it fixed sized. And then we'll create a root partition. And whatever free space that's there, it's going to take up. And that completes that file. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to create a virtual machine on my ESXi server. Okay, so it's going to be a typical configuration. I'm going to be calling this server Cobalt. BALT. And from here, I'm going to be selecting one of my file systems. This one here has the most space. And it's going to be Linux. It's going to be 64-bit. And then one network card. I'm going to use a 25 gig partition. I need to make some adjustments to this. One thing, being that this is a virtual machine, there's no floppy, so we delete the floppy. And I'm also going to be using the ISO to actually boot off of. And then from there, it's going to perform the kickstart installation from there. So we select the data store, ISO, and from here, I have the two volumes. I'm going to use one of two, because that's going to be the one that boots actually. And the next thing I'm going to give it two CPUs instead of one. And I'm ready to go. So now let me select the host Cobalt. I'm going to open up a virtual machine window. From here, I'm going to actually start the install. So we just powered it up. And of course, I forgot to do one step. And let me power this off. One thing that you need to do when you're selecting or using a DVD, you need to connect at power on in order to boot off the DVD. Okay, so since I've done that, I'm going to power it on again. This time it's going to boot off of the media. Okay, so now I'm going to add some, I'm going to tell it that's going to be a kickstart install. To do that, type in Linux. And then KS for kickstart equals NFS colon my IP address from NFS service 10.0.0.90, and I'm going to give it the location and the configuration file of the CFG file that I'm going to be using. It's going to be /mnt vgs db1 nfs kickstart /CentOS 58. And I'm also going to give it an IP address that I'm going to be using for this. IP equals 10.0.0.5. Netmask equals 255.255.255.0. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to boot up, and it's pretty much going to go in and load whatever drivers it sees for this VM, which is what it's doing now. I forgot to specify .cfg. And hit enter. That was my mistake. It should have, I did tell you that I needed to specify the configuration file. I just forgot the CFG extension of everything. Okay, so what I need to do here now, okay, so it sees my disk. VMware virtual disk 25 gigs. To create new partitions, it must be initialized. Would you like to initialize this drive, erase all data? Yes. And from here, the installation is actually going to proceed. It's going to be unattended until it's completed. Okay, there's the root file system. That is formatting. /boot. Okay, and here's the installation process starting. At this point, I'm going to speed up the video once this proceeds, or once it starts to install. It only takes several minutes. It should start very shortly. Okay. So at this point, I'm just going to speed up the video. Okay, the installation is almost done. This actually ran for like well over 25 minutes. And it's finishing up. This is almost complete right now. It's just on the system config files. So very shortly this will be done. Now, even though I'm using VMware to perform the installation, this will actually work with, this method would actually work with Red Hat as well. Okay, so now the install actually is finishing up now. Okay, so the installation actually has finished. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually reboot the VM. What I'm also going to do, just let it boot up. Now, for any of you VMware users out there, if you've done some steps, as in modifying your boot devices, as in actually having your DVD before your hard drives or virtual disk, before you actually reboot, you may want to uncheck the connect on power up. This way, when it restarts, it won't actually connect to the DVD and actually boot off the DVD ISO again. In my case, the disk is first, so when it rebooted, it actually saw the disk before seeing the DVD. And the system has booted, and it's up. Now, my resolution is off because this is using VMware. So in order for me to get my resolution higher than what it is, I need to install some VMware tools. But just to show you, the IP address that I used is 10.0.0.5, which is the IP address that I had used for the jumpstart. And there you have it. Just performed a NFS kickstart install.